I am thrilled to be presenting another roundtable to our friends out there. This one's wastewater treatment, what operators wish their engineer knew. And I want to get started with our panel. So kick things off by introducing myself. And Mark was already asking, well, where's your crown? I'm Christine Gonzalez, Senior Project Manager and Storage Tank Queen. See, like, there we go, at Entech. And I will be your moderator today. From Entech, we've got Ed Petrosky. He returns for his 6th roundtable. Clearly, he's found his niche here. And he's Entech's Director of Technical Services with more than 40 years of experience. Dale Miller personifies Entech's longtime focus on operators when helping our clients. He's been with Entech for almost 4 years as an operations specialist and has 27 years of operations experience. And Eric Moore, well, he's the total package. He's an engineer, he's an operator, he's a consultant, and he was a recent utility manager where he was the executive director at the West Branch Utility Regional Authority. He's now working with Entech as a project manager. One of the reasons our panels are so wonderful is because we gather our industry friends. So I'm thrilled today that joining us is Mark Bubel. He's a senior project engineer with Aqua, Pennsylvania with 40 years of experience. We've got Eric Ubek, and he's the general manager of the Arrowhead Lake Community Association and the Arrowhead Sewer Company. And he's been doing this for 6 years. And with Eric is Joe Rim. And Joe, are you, what is your title there?
Sewer plant manager.
Sewer plant manager. Okay, so he's also with the Arrowhead Sewer Company. And how long have you been there, Joe?
Here, 12 years.
12 years. And how long have you been doing this overall?
Oh, gosh. A little more than 30.
Awesome. So you can see we got all levels of experience, engineers, operators. So we're hitting this from all angles. Speaking of all angles, we want to make sure that we are taking care of our audience and focusing on what your struggles are, what your problems are. So I'm going to kick things off with a poll right now, and I'm going to let our panelists vote as well, since several of them are operators and get involved in this sort of thing. So I'm going to launch this poll, and it's, what are your biggest struggles when it comes to wastewater treatment, O&M, the operations and maintenance? So this will let us know what you're struggling with and where our panel should focus our conversation. Plus, again, we're taking Q&A from the audience throughout. So I already see there are a couple comments from our audience. So Tim Boyd noticed I forgot my crown, so I'm sure he's happy to see I've got it on. And Dave Mace from Entech says he wants to know, if Ed's been on 6 roundtables, does that make him the knight of the roundtable?
Oh man.
I'm gonna have to stop doing this.
No. You got to keep doing it. We just need to get you a crown. You need a crown too.
Yeah. This is as close as you're gonna get me to a crown. Okay.
Oh, I love that hat. I wore that hat at Pennsylvania Rural one time.
I think you did.
Ed,
so cool.
I was just going to run down to Burger King, get your crown.
Yeah, we got to make sure we get Ed one next time. Okay, so I'll give you another 10 seconds, and you can pick multiple things. And as I mentioned, our panelists are welcome to chime in as well. So another 5 seconds, and then I'll share the results with everyone so you can see where our focus is going to be. And again, use the Q&A, send us questions in throughout. So I'm going to end the polling now, and I can share the results with everybody. So share results, and there we go. So looks like 65% of the people said their plant is old and everything is breaking. Oh God, I can't even imagine. It's got to be tough working that way. And then second is don't want to change how things are done. And then new technology doesn't work. Excellent. Okay, so I'm gonna stop sharing the results. So panel, talk to me. So it looks like the audience's biggest struggle is the plant is old and everything is breaking. What comes to mind as far as what's happening? How can you help them? What are you guys thinking when you hear that? So anyone have any comments to kick things off? Yes, Dale.
You know, infrastructure is a big thing right now. It's the buzzword that everybody's talking about, and this is affecting that. And it's been ignored for a very long time. And a lot of people are struggling with some very old, outdated, and worn out equipment. And, you know, I understand, you know, money is not everywhere like it was 40, 50 years ago when you know, 40, 50 years ago when you upgraded and or build a plant, you know, you could get 75, 80% of that money from the government to do that work. Today, that doesn't happen.
Right.
So it's extremely difficult to come up with the funds. So what happens is those, you know, they just continually just keep on running and patching things together till you finally get to the point where you just can't do that anymore. And then you have to start working on things. But sometimes it has to get to the critical state before things happen.
Almost like it's got to break first, and then you convince people, okay, we got to raise the rates, we got to get funding, we don't have a choice, we really got to fix it.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is the other thing, you know, of course, no one wants to raise rates, and I'm right there with them because I'm a customer as well. And I understand that, but rates are a big part of it, and they don't want them raised. And instead of raising them a little bit every year, what ends up happening is it gets ignored, and then all of a sudden they want to raise them 50%, and everybody's up in arms. So there's other ways to approach that, but you know, that's not my forte. But you know, it seems to be, you know, we're not raising the rates, we're not raising the rates. That's what everybody seems to want to always say. So
Eric.
There's an issue when you have an old plant as well, that your engineer comes in to help on a project. You're going to fix some things, and the other things are also old and breaking. And trying to get the new system to work with the old without breaking the old, you have to be careful with that. And oftentimes operators have very specific practices that they use with some of their old stuff to keep it from breaking. So listen to your operator. If they say, you know, I really don't want to touch that, take them seriously, because there may be a real reason why they don't want to touch that.
Good point. Other comments?
Well, I think one of the things here that Dale said, and he started it with the rate thing, and that is why we have old plants falling apart. And there's just a mentality out there. If I said in a community we're going to raise the water rates, there'd be far less screaming and wailing and gnashing of teeth than if I said we're going to raise the sewer rates. Because it's sewage. How much can it cost to treat sewage? You flush it, it's gone. It keeps going downhill. What do we got to raise those rates for? It's more important that we pave our roads and we fix the lawns in this park and so on and so forth. And then when things are falling apart and DEP is beating you over the head, it's we can't afford to raise those rates. And I say, you know, what are your rates now? Are you realistically looking at them? Because no one looks at their rates to some yardstick. It's always, well, our rates are too high and we can't raise them. Well, people are walking around with cell phones that, you know, are costing like $800 and $1,000. Most people have a cell phone plan that's probably $150 a month. But when you want to raise the sewer rates from 40 to 50, it's like we're going to have to sell our homes and move out of town. So there's a whole perception there on rates that is just totally skewed against sewage. I even heard one borough council say, you know, we told them, well, wait, look around. Rates are going up on everything. You know, electric rates are going up, and you know, gas rates are going up. You know, you've got to allow for the inflation. And their response was, no, you don't understand. That's why we have to cut our rates to help out our citizens. That's not why you're making decisions on a utility. You've got to keep it maintained and operating. And that is the hardest struggle I think I've ever had anywhere, is that you got to raise the rates. So, and again, and I think it was Dale said it, the little increments on a continuing basis will give you the money. The $50 every 10 years is the one that people struggle with.
Well, it makes me think that there's actually two things: bad or educating the public so they realize hey, infrastructure is important. When you have something like down in Texas, that deep freeze they had back in February or March, and people's houses are flooding and they don't have water for day after day after day, then they start to get it. Then they realize, ooh, this is the infrastructure. This is a daily life thing that I really do need. So maybe we should spend a little bit of money on it. But it's also marketing. Sewer companies and water companies, they just do their job. They don't recognize to educate their people, to market to their customers can help them in the long run. So Eric and Mark, I'm wondering if either of you guys have seen, do you guys find that to be an effective way of managing rates or making sure you've got money to be able to do what you want to do? Mark, what do you see out there?
It's something that, that we had, in our business at Aqua, is a concern with a lot of customers, as Dale was saying, as Eric was saying, as Ed was saying. I mean, people do, and that's, Ed brought up the issue of cell phone bills. I mean, that's one of the ones that, that I think to myself, as customers, are complaining, about, us raising rates. So, I mean, we, with Aqua, we're not bashful about, investing, within the company or within our treatment plants, try to fix things and make them better. But of course, fixing things and making them better, comes with a price tag, and people, unfortunately, they, as we've been saying here, they kind of repel. But at the same time, they don't snivel at paying 150, 175 bucks a month, for a cell phone bill for like 5 cell phones for the family. It's kind of really crazy. But it's unfortunately, I think it's a fact of life that we have to deal with. I mean, in terms of, it's kind of an interesting thing. I mean, you mentioned kind of like marketing to people. I mean, I'm not sure how we do that. Effectively, it's not like we can, create TV commercials. It would be kind of cool if we could, but it's like, practically speaking, let's look at the business. I mean, it's like we're kind of promoting, wastewater and wastewater treatment. It's a little bit easier on the water side. You can show reservoirs and pipes and people with nice, clean, clear glasses of water, which everybody kind of understands. It's like, what do you do with sewer? We got, photos of like toilets and stuff like that. But so it's a little bit crazy, but it's like, yeah, you got to invest, in your systems. Unfortunately, you got to spend the money.
Yeah. Eric, what about you guys? Have you found any sort of public outreach, marketing to your consumers? What do you guys do?
Well, we take a different route in that we are a private gated community, and our membership, we've only got half of our members on the sewer system. And we really don't qualify for a lot of that state grant type stuff and other things. So we really do a lot of analysis and long range planning to make sure what we're doing is right. We've got an organizational strategic plan that pushes out 5 years. We've got a master plan that addresses the community for the next 25, that shows what infrastructure repairs are going to be necessary and replacements. We've built a reserve fund although it's not a official reserve fund, we've built an operational reserve fund within the sewer company. And we do a lot of assessing. Really, our key to our success has been able to long range planning as a key, and then making sure that we communicate with the membership that utilize, or our customers on the system, make sure they understand the importance of getting the infrastructure right. And we're challenged in that 80%, 75, 80% of our members are part-timers. They're only up this is a second home for them. So if you think you got problems in a municipality where folks are there full time and you're trying to tell them we got to raise a rate, try to do it in a community where they're paying taxes and a private community assessment and a sewer fee. And the way we've been able to tackle that is honestly by long range planning that reinforces the need to keep the infrastructure proper so that they're not paying outrageous fees in, let's say, 5-10 years. And we also do that where every couple of years, Joe will assess surrounding municipalities and private communities and what their rates are. And he also takes into account, DEP recommendations on EDUs and charges per EDUs. And we just throw it all together and we do some analyzing and some discussions, and we roll out that way. But we've been real successful in keeping things even keel and focused on the services and improving the infrastructure in years to come.
So that's cool. Actually, the last roundtable we did was on finding funding, and something came up about making sure your rates are in line with your neighbors. And I believe it was PMAA, Pennsylvania Municipal Authorities Association. They share rates, so you can get a sense of that. And that's educating your customers, letting them know either you're way low, or okay, or if they're too high, don't share it then, right? Dale, did you have a comment?
Yeah, and just to what Eric just spoke about there, they look at this as a business, and I don't think a lot of people look at it as a business. Does that? I mean, you got to pay bills, you got to pay your staff, you got to pay insurance. It's the same as a business, and I don't, and I'm not faulting anyone or calling anyone out, but I think a lot of municipal authorities and municipally owned wastewater plants, they don't look at it as a business, and if you got to put $100,000 out and you're only getting $80,000 in, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. So, I just wanted to make that comment. And I also wanted to also give a shout out to the operators out there that, because they do such a good job with the old and failing infrastructure, that people don't even know that it's there, is another reason that it's hard to get the money, because nobody sees any problems until DEP and something gets in the news. Oh, XYZ sewer plant put 500,000 gallons of sewage in the river. That happened once in 30 years, but nobody will ever forget that. They don't understand that they put 500 million gallons of clean water in the river. Nobody hears that, and nobody cares. They only hear the bad part of it. But like I said, a shout out to the people that keep these older plants running on baling wire and whatever they can, just to make it by. So they do almost too good of a job.
Yeah.
You
Eric,
forgot
Eric, go ahead, Mark.
I was gonna say you forgot the duct tape.
Yeah, absolutely.
Critical component, critical. Absolutely critical.
Yeah, look, I've got it right here. Ready to go.
I love to tell this story. Does anybody remember the TV show called The Red Green Show, where he was a country bumpkin handyman? Okay. And the people used to call him to fix things. Okay. And he'd go and there'd be a problem, and he'd reach in his bag and he'd pull out a roll of duct tape, and he'd be wrapping duct tape around something, and he'd say, "This is just temporary unless it works."
Temporarily permanent.
Yeah. So I always think of that with duct tape. And so many of our repairs are exactly that. We don't have the money to do it the right way. And it's only temporary unless it works.
Wow. Eric, did you have a comment? Or Eric Moore, did you have? I just realized there's two Erics on my panel. Uh-oh. Eric Moore, did you have a comment?
It does lead to a vicious circle, in my experience, where you have your board is not raising rates, and they're trying to do what they think is right and keep rates low. And the operators are trying to ask for things and saying, we got to fix this. This is almost out of its useful life. We got to keep on this stuff. And they don't get a good answer because they're trying to keep the rates low. And so you get into this cycle of the operators getting tired to ask. They feel it's not worth it to go and ask. They feel like they're getting in trouble for asking for stuff. And so they start to stay quiet. And now the board doesn't hear anything. They think everything's great, right? Nobody's complaining. So you end up in this vicious circle of no one complains, nothing gets fixed, and no one complains because they've given up on trying to get anything fixed. So it's really on a board level, the operators would say the board level needs to work on their end of things. And I'll note that we had two communities at West Branch. When we combined them, one side of the river had a flat fee of $16 a month for sewer, and the other had a water use-based fee that averaged around 27. And in the one community, we raised rates, we being, I was a consultant for them at the time, pre-West Branch, every year for about 4 years, and took them from 16 to 48. And we got no complaints. Nobody came to a meeting. Nobody said anything bad. On the Muncie side, the other side of the river, they decided to wait until the last minute. So they went from 27 to 55. And then we got a whole bunch of complaints. Of course, they had a much more complex system. So some of their users were paying $99 a month, and not a single one of them called to say, thank you for lowering my rate, because we made them all uniform. So you can't win even when you're doing the right thing. So
Interesting. What you mentioned, like operators, they keep asking for help and money and then fixing things. Please help, and the board's not listening. Any advice on what can an operator do who's not being listened to and things are falling apart? Dale?
Right in the logbook repeatedly, because when DEP comes a calling, they want to know why that wasn't fixed. Requested money from the board, denied. Requested money from the board, denied. Written records are the way to go. This means nothing.
Get the board.
You got to write it down.
Get the board to come down to the plant. They need to visit the plant.
Do they know where it is? That's the next question. I've been in communities where I don't know. I mean, I'm on the sewer board. I don't know where.
Are you serious?
Oh,
oh
absolutely.
my God.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, but just a 2-second story here. Many years ago, I went out to the city of Seattle just to walk around. So I'm a real geek. So I go and I want to see the sewer plants when I go to these places. So I went to City Hall in the city of Seattle, Washington, and nobody could tell me where the sewer plant was. I found it, but nobody could tell me. Now this was before Google Maps and all that kind of stuff. But I went on a tour on a boat on Puget Sound that went out and came around where I don't know where it was, out on the tip, and then we're going out buying the guys on this tour boat, and he goes, "Does anybody know what that is over there?" I said, "Yeah, I can see the digester lids. It's a wastewater plant." "Yeah, how do you know that?" So then anyway, I found it, but I mean that was like a 150 million gallon a day wastewater treatment plant, and they were just building it. It was brand new, and nobody knew where it was.
Oh, so
It
sad.
That's kept secret.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Joe, you had a comment?
No, I just wanted to follow up on a couple things here. Yes, definitely, like Dale said, make sure you log everything, because when the DEP inspector comes in, that's one of the first things he's going to look for. I've worked with some townships where if it ain't broke, they don't worry about it. They don't want to fix it because going back to the rates, they may not collect enough. But also in that same perspective, a lot of the township supervisors, things of that nature, they don't understand DEP, and I had this recently happen. They don't care. They look at a township as a taxing authority. So they have the ability to come up with the funds to make those repairs.
A lot of times what the DEP folks will tell you is it's not just raise your rates. They'll talk about what are your rates in comparison to your annual household income. If you go to Penvest or RUS and you ask them for money, they're going to compare your rates in a financial calculator to what can your community afford. And that's kind of a yardstick that people should be using. Our rates are $30 a month, but the yardstick says our community can afford $90 a month. And don't think that's an outlandish number. It's not. And if you're at 30 and you can afford 90 and your plan is falling apart, shame on you. So look at those kind of yardsticks. And I'm not saying raise them to 90, but geez, get them off of 30. Get up to 45 or something. And those are the kind of things you have to consider. What can this community afford? Now, if you happen to be in a community where it's a lower income community, okay, maybe that is a lower number. You can't afford as much. But then at the same time, some of the grants and funding programs that are out there may be available to you to help supplement that income. But look at those kind of yardsticks also. You can't, and this is my problem with some of the people, they just say, we can't afford more. And they don't look at the whys and wherefores and how much money's potentially out there. And again, like what Eric was saying, the one community, nobody complained. It was like the people were realizing that they had a bargain there. Keep your mouth shut. And And, that's another thing. I go to a lot of public meetings and they'll say, well, we're going to, raise the rates. Oh, everybody will be screaming. They'll flood the building and they'll raise the rates and like 50 people will show up and they'll say, look, we have 50 people in here complaining. I said, do you realize you have 3,000 connections? Where's the other 2,950?
Yep.
Maybe they don't care. Majority rules.
Yeah, a couple comments from our audience. Tim Boyd says, thanks, Dale. It's nice to know I'm not the only one that looks for wastewater plants when traveling. Now I can tell my wife I'm not the only one. So you made me feel a lot better. And Ed, Carol Paul wants to know where your propeller is. And it's because, are you in your new mountaintop office?
It's not my new mountaintop office. It's the same one that's been here empty for the last 14 months.
Okay. It's just new for us to see you there. Okay. Also, another comment from the audience. Keith Groves says, with the advent of strict liability, operators should continually tell their board or other supervisors when equipment doesn't work. It could save your license. So that idea of documenting everything, I mean, I know that as an engineer and a salesperson, and just how important it is to have something in writing of what happened and what you did. I love that idea, as well as Eric's more of getting the board down to the plant. In fact, it sounds like it's something maybe once a year they should be invited down to make sure they know where it is, what it looks like. It gives the operator a chance to perhaps chat with board members. One thing I was wondering, as an operator, do you ever sort of, I don't know, try to get close to a board member who maybe has a more technical background or nuts and bolts that gets it, like enjoys that sort of thing? And if you could become friendly with that board member, maybe they could be your voice with the other people. Has anyone ever tried something like that before or seen that work?
Need to be really careful with that one.
Yeah.
Politics is not a game you want to play lightly.
Okay. So
Yeah.
when you say politics, you mean like trying to get the board to do what you want them to do, or what's the politics involved there?
There are always politics within a board, and they don't always agree. If you have a good board, they work together, they try to make unanimous decisions. If you don't have a good board, they can snipe at each other, they can fight. And if you are seen as taking one person's side, they'll put you in that box. Your job as the operator is to be neutral and to come in and say, I don't care what your politics are. This is what this system needs. This is what this plant needs. And to be polite but insistent, and even in the face of pressure, because they'll pressure you to say, we don't have the money for that. Well, I'm sorry, I can't help you with that. I'm the operator. I'm telling you what the plant needs. And it's up to you guys to come up with a way to find the money to make it work.
Okay. The other Eric, sounds like you're in agreement with that. So the idea of trying to get in good with one of the board members, bad idea?
Yeah. It's you want to treat them unanimous across the board, all the same. One of the things we do here at Arrowhead is it's an almost mandatory program with new board members to make them go down to the treatment facility, whether they like it or not, and then they get to tour the area with Joe and get probably more than they ever wanted to know about it. But at least they then understand what the reasoning is behind, whatever the process is that we're looking to fix. We've also brought broken equipment to board meetings. We got people that'll scream and yell about I don't know what it is. Why should I have to pay for it? We found a home that was built, 40 some odd, 50 something years ago. And the lateral was actually a roof leader drain pipe from the house to the roadside into the right of way. And it was almost, like translucent pipe. And we brought that in and we shared that with people, and we made an example of what we're finding out there and why it's so important that we get after this. And Joe will publish articles in our quarterly community magazine, if you will, a newspaper. So we get out and we do the best we can, but that doesn't mean you're still going to have naysayers. But when it comes to the board, we've got a good relationship with them, and we make sure that they understand our stance. I don't know how much it happens in the municipal world, but for me, Learning about all this stuff since I've been here has been key in gaining their confidence. And then I utilize my consultants appropriately as well. Typically what I do, and I'll use Entech as an example, I bring in my project manager and have him brief me and the board once a year on the various projects we have going on. That way, not only are they hearing it from me, they're hearing it from Joe if they see him in a meeting, but we'll bring the consultant in once a year just to do a 30,000 level info dump on here's everything you got going on. And it kind of adds to the confidence and background of what Joe and I are trying to accomplish. So they hear us every month. And I know a lot of people say, well, at the municipality, the engineer's there every month. Sometimes you got to look for that one other voice. So it's not Charlie Brown's teacher just running their mouth month after month because you just hear that womp, womp, womp. Just find somebody, even if it's a different engineer from a firm, bring somebody in. Make sure it's got that squeaky, annoying voice, just so that the people are paying attention and then the point gets heard.
Excellent ideas. I love it. Dale, did you have a comment?
No, I really like that idea. That, like you said, a change in tone is different, so that people aren't hearing that same voice. And I do like your Charlie Brown analogy. That's really cool. So that's good.
Yeah,
I like
good. Yeah, that's good.
And as operators also, one of the things that I try to get out to the boards, or even to Eric here, or most people, yeah, we work for companies, like we work for Aqua, we work for this one, or whomever, but we're held accountable by a higher standard, which is, of course, our regulatory agencies. And it goes back to your comment about protecting your license, making sure everything's documented, everything else. If they're doing something or not doing something, we need to tell them, because we need to protect our license. It's our blood. Good
point. Yeah. So another comment from our audience. This is from Marcy Beggs. Hey, Marcy, I understand that you, Dale, and I are all wearing the same Entech shirt today. That's cool. I like being twins with people. So Marcy says an idea, how about sending out informational brochures with the sewer bills to educate the customers on what's going on, have photos of the equipment and what they're doing. It's that show and tell, like Eric Ubek just said, when they realize, oh my God, this is the condition of parts of our system. This is what we're using and why it's a problem. I think nothing better than that. One thing I know is when I'm an Aqua customer, so when I get my water bill, there's all sorts of pamphlets in there, and I just that's called trash. So I'm like, oh, I see the problem. I just want to see the bill, the number. I'm always curious, am I using more water or less water? And that's it. And it dawned on me, oh, there could be maybe everyone else does this too. They just throw out those pamphlets. So Eric, any comments on that? Eric Moore?
We tried sending pamphlets and developing a website. And overall, the biggest bang that we got for our buck was bringing the school kids in for a tour. Just like with recycling, how that worked. When you bring the kids in, they'll take it home to their parents. Hopefully not physically, but they'll take the information home to their parents, and they'll then have some knowledge as they become ratepayers themselves of what they're paying for. And that does help your ratepayers be a little more amenable to rate increases.
Good points. Excellent. Okay, Dale?
Yeah, I read some stuff about DC Water, which is the whole huge wastewater plant down in the DC area, and the gentleman that what he did there, which I thought this was a very novel approach. They of course they needed to raise rates. So what they did was they had town hall meetings around the DC area, and they invited everybody that ever filed a complaint. So they invited all the people that you really don't want, but they had them come and they educated those people. We need, this is what's going on. And it worked wonderfully. They raised the rates and got no complaints. But it's you don't think about it. You think, I don't want those people here, because they're the ones that they invited. And then they had these town halls, and it was a very, very interesting article. And I think it worked very well.
It's that education,
right?
Because once people realize and understand the value we're giving them with their lives,
yep.
Yeah, it can be done. Excellent. Well, do you know what? I want to move on to another topic that was of concern to our audience. So the number 2 voted issue was that they don't want to change the way things are done. And I'm not sure, it could go both ways, whether the operators have been there a long time and they don't want to change it, or, and it's a younger person saying, well, can't we do it this way? And they're like, no, 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 we've always done it this way. Or is it that that they're that I don't know what the thought process behind it, but I know you guys have heard that before. Don't want to change the way things have done. Is that right, Dale?
Absolutely. You know, we've always done it this way, you know, and again, I shared this little story with us before, but they said, I've already been to somewhere that, you know, and I'm not faulting anyone, but you know, the operator says, you know, 1:15, I turn that valve over there, 15 minutes. And I go back at 1:30 and I close it. I said, well, what does it do? Well, I don't know. I just do that every day because that's what I always did, you know, and that kind of stuff just like makes, it blows my mind, but it does happen. And I think it's all, a little bit of that is just education. They were always, you do that every day. So they do it every day. And, you know, if it was me, I'd want to know what it was doing, but I mean, I understand why some people don't, but that's part of it, you know, and it's like, you know, at 8 o'clock, I do this, at 9 o'clock, I do this, at noon, I do this, you know, and then you say, well, we're going to change the whole process that now what you were doing, and people get very upset about that. No one's like, I should say no one. A lot of people, they don't like change. They want it to remain the same. But there are ways, you know, okay, it's still going to be a routine. It's just going to be a different routine. So, you know, that it's a hard sell sometimes.
One of the biggest issues is that the stuff never stops coming to the plant. So when you change things, you know, you can have folks that don't want to change things for good reasons and for bad reasons. So if they don't want to change because they don't understand it and they just don't want to change, that's bad. If they don't want to change it because they need that predictability, especially in cases of an emergency. So if you have something going wrong and everyone's standing around looking at you and saying, well, what are we going to do? And you've got a new process, it's pretty daunting because you may not be able to know off the top of your head exactly what you need to do like you did with the old system. So, you know, that hits you on a couple levels. You know, professionally, you're thinking, wow, maybe I don't have it anymore. Maybe I lost a step. But, you know, it's tough when you start a new system up and you don't know how it's going to react to all the different crazy things that will happen at some point.
Any other comments on that? At the plant, we don't want to change the way things have been done. Things are always done this way. Ed.
Well, you know, I used to tell this story, and I'll just summarize with the final phrase. You know, if there's one constant in our company, it's change. Okay, and that's what really operators and engineers got to look at. It's constantly changing. Treatment plant designed for 3.5 million gallons a day. I can guarantee you, it probably never flows at 3.5 million gallons a day, except for like 2 seconds in a particular slice of a day. It may flow at 1 million a day. When it's raining, it may flow at 15 million a day. It changes. And operators always look at the flow, but do you realize the organic flow rate is also changing the same way? That's why we have blowers that change and things that go on and off. And we have control panels so that you don't have to be running around turning 52 valves at one time. We have SCADA that you can sit in a place and do it automatically. Or better yet, you could just sit and watch the screen and watch the plant do it automatically. Change is a good thing. It's you know, regulations are changing. Okay. 20 years ago, Chesapeake Bay was someplace you went to, you know, do clamming and then fishing and that kind of stuff. Now it's a whole set of rules and regulations, the Chesapeake Bay rules and regs. It was a massive change to a lot of operators who had to learn how to run 5-stage Bardenfos and MLEs and what have you. But the business is changing, even though everybody wants to sit there and say, no, I just want to do things. You got to learn to adapt to change. You absolutely have to, because it's going to keep changing on you, including changing the rates higher.
Another comment from our audience. This is from David Anspach, who says, forward progress. We preach that a decision isn't always correct. Football has 4 downs because they aren't all touchdowns. So it's important to realize, yeah, change will happen. It may not, and so often it's like you've got multiple choices. Like, are we going to do it this way, that way, that way? And you just need to pick one and then work through it. So I'm curious, Mark, out there at your different plants, you guys are constantly upgrading and changing things. Do you have a secret in getting good operators that are good at accepting these changes and moving forward with the new technology, or what are your secrets out there?
I think in general, our operations folks, I mean, right now, we kind of go through periods, of people coming and going. Right now, the folks that we have doing operations for us, I mean, I can't even, and I'm not blowing anybody's horn or anything, but the guys that we have right now, guys, we don't have any female operators presently, but the folks that we have right now are phenomenal. I think kind of across the board. I mean, they're one of the things too, we were talking about change. I mean, if you're kind of just coming to work to do a job, as Dale was saying, open this valve and then 15 minutes later close it, but you kind of don't know what the valve's doing. If that's what you're in for, when you come to work, it's like, okay, well, you've got a job, but I think there's a lot more to life than just that. And people that know me, I mean, I think probably all the folks from Entech know me. It's like I live, eat, and breathe wastewater. Figuratively speaking, of course, but it's something that it's something that I really do enjoy. We've got, we've kind of, I guess in more recent times, we've automated certain things, particularly like our sequencing batch reactor plants. We've incorporated basically nutrient probes, online nutrient probes for like nitrate, ammonia, ORP, particularly, which helps for doing the nitrogen removal at our plants. Some of the operators get it. I mean, if particularly on SBR systems, I mean, there's a real advantage to basically being able to see trending on a screen over time, and others not so much. And I think the others that are not so much are folks that kind of did it the old way. Learned from operators years ago who taught them, well, this is what you do. You do your 30-minute settle test and you run your plant, on your 30-minute settle test. And that's all well and good, but some of the, particularly with the, the new permits of today, we're getting more stringent phosphorus limits. We're getting more plants that, I mean, even if they're stream discharge, they'll have to do nitrogen removal. So it's important to basically use all the tools that are at your disposal. And if you have probes that can tell you what's going on within your treatment process, and you don't embrace that, you're kind of really like losing out. And that's one of the things that I try to convince operators when I'm out on site. It's like, look at what this trend says. This is what it says, and you see why. And it's like, one supervisor in particular, I mean, he in particular, kind of does really get it. So it's kind of heartening, at least to me, for me, that I've at least convinced one person that hopefully, he's convincing his, the people that work under him as far as direct line operations.
Yeah, I love it. That's got to be so rewarding. I heard a rumor, Mark, that on weekends you drive your wife around to the various plants. That's like your sightseeing. Is that true?
It's true. I mean, if you want me to get her over here on screen, I'll get her to corroborate that statement. The one additional thing, Dale was telling a story about, and somebody else was too, I think, online here, about going to see wastewater plants when you're on vacation. One of the things, the one year, we got the family together and we're going to go to Martha's Vineyard. So it was like, I was like, I'm looking up on Martha's Vineyards. I wonder how they do wastewater treatment on Martha's Vineyards. I found out where the plant was. I found out who the superintendent was for the plant. I got his emailed him like 2 weeks before we left. I was like, hey, by Wednesday of the week, we're kind of not really going to have anything to do. Would it be possible that, that I might come by your plant and get a tour? And they said, sure, Mark, that'd be great. So that's what I ended up doing on Wednesday after everybody kind of had their fill of the beach and were sleeping in till like 10 o'clock. I was over there about 8 a.m.
Here I am thinking like you're such a goofball, and then I'm like, oh, wait a second. I was
Oh,
out in
poor
California.
woman. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I do it with water treatment up in mountain communities. I'm like, well, where's the water come from? And I'm like, oh, there's a tank. Oh, how's this all work? Yeah, okay.
Not a vacation until you've been to the local sewer plant, right?
That's
Exactly.
right.
Yeah. When they run a sludge age of 365 days. That's the one thing that I always remembered that this guy told me. I said, really, 365 days? Yep. They had like a big oxidation ditch.
Well, do you know what? I want to take a pause right now. Our panel doesn't know this is coming. Well, actually, some of the panel may know because they've done these before with me. So they know crazy stuff may happen as we're moving forward. But I'd like to play a little game that I'm going to call Sewer System Survivor. Okay. So all of you are trapped in the sewer system. Oh, it's yucky, yucky. The question I'm posing to all of our panelists is, okay, what's the worst screw up you ever saw an engineer do and make it a wastewater treatment plant? Or just tell us about something dumb or odd that you saw an engineer do once out at a treatment plant. So, and our audience will be voting on who's got the most poignant answer. So, Ed, I'm going to start with you.
A thing an engineer did? Us engineers never do anything wrong. God, I've been in the business for 47 years, and I only made a mistake once.
Which was what?
I thought I was wrong, but I was really right.
That's your answer. And you don't like, maybe it's yourself who made the mistake, but you don't need to name names. It's just some engineer. So Dale.
I'm gonna tell you one quick story. I had an engineer design the plant, and he said, I'm designing all the pumps to pump from one tank to the other. He says, I'm designing them. He says, I got it. I know what I'm doing. All right, go ahead. He designed it. Not one pump could raise the water high enough to get it over the wall of any of the tanks.
Oh,
So the engineering firm bought a lot of pumps that day. But anyway, that was my worst screw up.
At least he was consistent. None of them were.
Yeah.
He didn't have just some worked and some didn't. None of them worked.
So Dale, what about you? What have you seen engineers do that's questionable?
Yeah, I'm not going to say one particular thing, but my thing in wastewater was maintenance. So I've seen way too many situations where equipment gets jammed in some small room where you have to stand on your head to change oil in this pump. And I see the guy where you got to stand on your head with a straw and try to get the oil out of this thing, and you're standing like, what in the hell was this guy thinking? But again, then you go back and say, wait a minute, he had a piece of paper with a square, and it had to make this fit, that fit, this fit, and that fit. And again, absolutely nothing against the younger folks coming out of college and that kind of stuff. They were told, make that shit fit in that box. So they did, but they don't understand that you got to work on that stuff. And I've seen many a time, I mean, my biggest thing that aggravates the living snot out of me is filters for blowers.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you put a blower in a building, there's the filter 20 feet in the freaking air. That you got to change those things. So you got to drag the ladder out. You got to have two guys. You're up there, you're hanging on by, with your toes on the ladder, holding this big hood piece that goes underneath there. It just aggravates the living crap out of me. It's like, put it down that it's 5 feet high, 4 feet high. I don't care. Even if it takes more pipe, but that's the one thing I see all the time. You walk up and you see these filters, they're like way in the air. Now, if it was something that you had to work on once every 10 years, okay. But I mean, every couple months, you got to check these filters. And then what ends up happening is they're up there, then they don't get checked. And then you burn up blowers, and then they overheat because the filters aren't changed. Well, they're not changed because you can't get to the freaking things. But I see that all over the place. And again, I just think it comes down to the practicality of not understanding that, this stuff needs to be worked on.
Yeah, I
And
think one of the best things you can do if you're an young engineer, old engineer, just an engineer, get out there and talk to the operator about what he hates about his plant. What are all the problems? And you'll learn actually Eric shaking his head, one thing after another. So I've worked with Dale for years, and my God, I've never heard him talk about pet peeves like this before. So I can tell he's
Yeah.
really turned up about it.
yeah,
So Eric, I want to hear your story. Have you ever seen an engineer mess up at a plant?
When I was a young man, one of my first plants that I had to go and go pull dimensions inside this plant, every single pipe was either forehead high or groin high. So they were all headbangers or nut busters. And I had to crawl through that plant. I'm not the tallest guy. I'm 5'10", but I'm not the tallest guy. But you get tired of walking on your tiptoes to get over all the piping to get back to the valves. If there's an emergency, no one, well, you could get there, but you'd probably maim yourself in the process or knock yourself unconscious. So it's exactly what Dale said. If your engineer doesn't get his butt out into the field and have to go turn a valve somewhere or change a light bulb or read the flow meter that's on the ceiling, those things, if they don't get out there and see it, then they don't understand it. And then they lay it out in crazy ways that make us as operators curse their names forever.
Excellent. The other Eric Ubek, how about you? And have you ever seen any engineers mess up or cause problems for you guys?
I'll have to defer to Joe only because of my limited time in this field.
Joe, what about you?
a couple things. One,
I knew he'd have more than one.
well, like Eric said, many years ago, sometimes and my experience was EITs. And we were doing a project, and this particular project was putting in a new low pressure system. And the EIT inspector at the time was not checking in with me. And he actually had shut a curb stop to a homeowner, a customer, and never opened it, which caused down the road burned out pumps, the homeowner's pump and things of that nature. And he actually tried to shirk his responsibility and wanted me to sign off on the field reports. So that kind of jerked my chain, just a little.
Ooh.
The other thing, and this goes back because, Ed, I'm not going to throw you under the bus or anything like that.
Good.
You were talking about, never making mistakes, things of that nature. I remember about 25 years ago, Ed, I think it was up in, what was it, Coolbaugh Township, bird balls. You remember bird balls, Ed?
Oh, yeah.
Well, we won't throw you under the bus for that one.
Hey, it was a good idea at the time.
But no, and I agree. Engineers should get out there. I mean, years ago, judging by the age group of most of them here, with the exception of Christine, engineers, because they had a PE, were automatically giving an operator's license years ago.
No way.
yes, they were.
Yeah, and so they automatically thought they were operators, and they came out, and what they said was gold, whether they actually were at the plant or not, on a daily basis, understanding the operations of the plant. I think that has now been changed. Help me out here, guys.
That is correct. That no longer happens.
Yeah, but
That actually stopped happening 6 months before I got my PE license.
Ah!
I didn't qualify for my automatic sewer license.
Yep.
I had to take the test like everybody else.
and that used to be my biggest pet peeve back in the days, because they were automatically operators and didn't have one day of on-the-job experience.
I had no idea. Good. I'm glad it changed. Okay, Mark, give us your story. Have you ever seen any engineers do questionable things?
I mean, I've seen it. I think Ed kind of alluded to it, and Dale as well, in terms about piping things up, and not including like any unions to basically get things back apart to get a pump apart. It's just like really stupid stuff. But the one thing, it really didn't have anything to do with a bad design or anything. But I know when I was a young engineer, I remember, going to a plant. We were doing an upgrade, actually, the Burr of Avondale. And Johnston Construction out of York, PA, was actually, they got the job, and it was pretty. They did a really good job on the upgrade. But I can remember when we did startup, of the new aeration blowers, just PD blowers, and going down with the superintendent. I can see him clear as day. I just can't remember his name. But I had, I got to come to to come to this wastewater treatment plant with a tie on, right? Because I'm the engineer. As Eric and Joe, were saying before, and I get that whole thing. But so I'm there with my tie, and I was talking with the superintendent from Johnston about the blower or something, and the blower did not have the shroud on it because they were doing something with the blower. So I lean over the blower with my tie, basically approaching the belt on the thing, and this hand like reaches around over my shoulder and grabs my tie and pulls it up. The man probably saved my life. It probably did, because if I would have gotten caught, I probably would have had my neck broken. You wouldn't have the pleasure of me here today on this great event that we're going through now. But that was like one of the dumbest things that I ever did. Unfortunately, since then, I assure you that I've gotten a lot brighter in doing those kind of things. That was a stupid thing to do.
Just stop wearing a tie, Mark.
I did. See, I don't wear them anymore, just for that reason. From that day, I have never worn a tie.
Oh my God. Well, you know what? Thank you guys so much for your stories. A whole lot to learn. So I'm launching a poll, and I think the panelists can vote as well. So pick for who you think had the best story about an engineer who maybe didn't do things so great out there in the field. And actually, speaking of engineers, Dale, I know you were telling us yesterday that when you go out to a plant, what do you tell the operators?
Usually, if I go out to plant, I'm meeting a new operator. My first sentence is, I work for an engineering firm, but I'm not an engineer. So, so usually once I say that, everybody then talks to me. Otherwise they're looking at me like, who's this guy? Do I want to talk to him or not? But usually when you say that, then it usually lightens up and everybody's a lot more talkative.
Interesting. Now I love that technique. So I'll give the audience another 5 seconds, and then we'll end the polling, and we'll see. Now remember, it's sewer system survivor. So we're going to see who's going to be rescued from the sewer, and the rest of you are stuck there. So I'm going to end the polling now, and we will share the results. And boom, it looks like Mark Papal. Nice job. Phenomenal story. Loved it.
Well, thank you all.
You're the winner.
So we were talking about, right before we delved into that topic, when it comes to not wanting to change how things are done. I'm curious, Eric, I know Eric Ubek, you've been there 6 years. When you came out, have there been a lot of changes since you took over as the general manager out there?
Yeah, we've almost rebuilt the entire facility. It seems we had a lot of issues when I was here when I first arrived, and Joe was not bashful in letting me know the issues and concerns he had, and it really became a battle to get our board of directors to really understand. One or two of them kind of got it. The rest of them I had to get on board, and our board, as a municipal board, I see less turnover on the municipal side, but on the HOA side, every year it seems you're getting at least 2 to 3 new directors. I'm sure there are municipalities out there that have the same thing going on. But to me, I think in the private side, you see more turnover. So it's a constant challenge. And I guess luckily for us, although it's unfortunate, we had a lot of issues with DEP that really reinforced what we needed to do. And it was not really an option unless my board wanted to accept a bigger, heavier stick swinging at us from DEP. So, we've done a lot of good things, and we've still got a lot of work to do. But we do pride ourselves on the fact that when you go down to that treatment facility today, it almost looks like a completely different place than it did 6 years ago.
Oh my God, remarkable. Okay, Dale, did you have a comment?
No, not on that subject, no.
Okay. So a comment, Brian Killian from Entech says, Dale, I usually say I'm an engineer, but also have common sense because he's an operator. So that's how he gets by being both out there in the field.
Us engineers are getting hammered.
I just
Mark?
want to let everybody know, I asked Christine if she could put up on the screen which ones of us are engineers or are not, so that we get more favorable votes, but she wouldn't do that.
Mark, do you have a comment?
Yeah, I mean, typically what I do to try to it's like, let me just say before I start, the operators of the world have the hardest time in terms of what they do, and I have the deepest respect for them. I really do. I'm not just saying that, just because of who we have here, in this event. I really do. And they don't get the credit that they're really due for all that they do with the little bit of help that they actually get. So I mean, I really do respect them. And typically what I do, if I have to go to a plant, to try to lighten things up, as Dale and Ed had sort of alluded to, I'll say, now I'm an engineer, but please don't hold that against me. It's like, if you do, I totally get it. And I probably, the engineers of the world do, because engineers do a lot of really stupid stuff. I said, full disclosure, they absolutely do. Please don't hold that against me until you get to know me a little bit.
Yeah, good point.
I typically lightens things up as well.
Well, I see we've got about another 10 minutes for our roundtable. So reminders to the audience, especially if you want those Pennsylvania DEP credits, submit a question, submit a comment. And one other thing, or Ed, go ahead.
Those engineers are getting bashed, and a lot of people are saying things about operators and so on and so forth, and that, they used to get them when they were a PE, and it doesn't really count. I just want to do one thing here. I didn't say anything about this before, but I am a licensed operator. Okay. And I did get my license because I was a PE. However, I did a little goof up back in 2011 and didn't have enough credits to renew my license. And I had to take the test. So I'm an operator twice. I got a certificate that says so, and it's over 30 years old. Actually, it's probably about 40 years old now. I haven't counted lately. I think I got my operator's license in 1980. But I did have to take the test because I blew my renewal one year.
Yeah. Well, I'm going back to the initial poll that we put out to our audience. One of the other concerns that they had was that the new technology doesn't work. So have any of you guys ever dealt with that, seen that, heard that out there in the field? And what do you end up doing? Dale?
Well, that's a pretty tough statement to say that, because most technologies and things are tested beyond being tested to make sure that they do work. And there are situations where things are installed and the operators are not really trained correctly to know how to operate these systems. And of course, you do startup, well, the factory guy's there for 3 or 4 days and poof, he's gone. And now it's in your lap and you got to make this thing work. And and that all comes down to, I was going to try to go back to sort of what Mark was saying earlier, is, there's lots of information today. The big thing about SCADA systems is, older plant, what do I need that for? I didn't need that before. What do I need that for? And Mark and I have had this conversation, and he brought up about trends. To me, that is the most useful thing that you can get from a SCADA system. You can, if it has a 5-day trend, you can see what was happening. Okay, it started to go bad here, and it went better there, and it is just so useful. And I try to get people, I said, go back and look at the trends. What happened, and that kind of stuff. But the and it also comes to what Mark also said about operators is you got to try to get the operators to take ownership of what you just put in there. If you got 5 guys and they all just totally despise this system you put in there, you're in some serious trouble, because that thing ain't going to work no matter what you do, because they don't want it to work. And I'm not saying people do that on purpose. It's just that you have to have somebody with a buy-in that says, yeah, I want to make this thing work. Help me do it. And if they have help, it usually will take off, and then the other guys will catch on, and things will go well. But if you don't have somebody with buy-in on the process, that you may have totally flipped around what they were used to do. You may have went from an SBR to a continuous flow plant, or the other way around, and they have no idea what this thing can do. And helping them out and getting buy-in from those folks is the most important thing there is, in my view. That's my personal view. So.
Yeah. Any other comments about the new technology not working, or how you help your people? Because I just know I have an Apple phone, which I adore because it's user friendly. Apple products have good user interface. It's logical. We use these stupid vision thing and new Forma computer programs at Entech, and I'm like, this sucks. I can't figure this out. And I'm sure everyone else struggles. And I'm like, I know I'm a smart person. I know it's not me. So I can't imagine being an operator at a plant with your job critical, all these things you got to learn. And if it's not a good interface, oh my God, how horrible. And yeah, I wouldn't want the technology to work because it's hard to understand. Eric Moore?
You have to provide support for your employees. So whether you're a director or you're a board, in some cases, the operators answer directly to the council. It's important to try to get those folks to understand that new technology is going to be required. That's just the way of the world these days. And a lot of these folks that are operating are not technology centered folks. I had a couple of folks at West Branch who'd never owned a cell phone. And to try to get them to use a cell phone to be on call for the overnight emergencies was a challenge. But with enough support and patience and exposure to the technology, they all picked it up. We didn't have anybody who couldn't do it, but they had to feel like they were being supported, because otherwise they're disinclined to do it, whether it's a new technology for the plant or just a new smartphone that they have to use to answer the overnight calls. It all has to come with support from the people behind them.
Good point. A couple comments from our audience. Tim Boyd, back to the engineer and operator's license. He mentions that he tries to remember that he's an engineer with an operator's license, and he wants to be the kind of engineer that will listen to people and who know what they're doing. Rob Horvath from our Pittsburgh office, he adds, and on a related note, operators who buy into a concept can make a bad project work very well, even when it shouldn't. So that's interesting. So yeah, operators, having them out there and understanding this is critical to success. Dale?
Yeah, just the whole support thing too. And this is a shout out to vendors in general. Believe me, vendors want their stuff to work, because the last thing they want is for Joe down the road to be upgrading his plant and say, hey, what do you think of this? Oh, that's a piece of SHIT. Don't ever buy that thing. Don't ever touch that stuff. They don't want that. So, I mean, you if you reach out to them generally, and most of the time, they will do what they can to help you. But a lot of people draw back, and they don't want to contact, and they don't want to ask. Just ask, because they want it to succeed. Believe me, because they want to sell another one. So, you have to look at it in that respect too. That they're there to support you too. You just have to ask for the help.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I see lots of head nodding with that. Ed.
And I think, one of the common things I've heard here is, talking to each other and listening to each other. And I think particularly us engineers, we say we listen to the operator, but I think, what's that thing they say about the Great Britain and America, where two people separated by the same language or something like that? We don't always talk the same language. We talk English, but sometimes us engineers have a tendency to, he doesn't know what he's talking about. No, he does know what he's talking about, but you really got to listen to this operator, because he's presenting it different than you're used to, and ask him some questions and talk back and forth and spend the time to really learn. Okay. They're operators. They have different priorities and different perspectives than an engineer does, who's trying to design something on clean paper. So you really do have to not just talk to them, but listen to them and make sure you understand what they're saying, what they're trying to tell you. Don't dismiss it as he doesn't understand. Assume he does, but try and get it in your language so you can understand what's going on.
Good point. Yes, Eric, you.
Yeah, just and as someone who's not a licensed operator nor an engineer, so I get to ride this one real well. I don't get to take any blame for anything. My focus is more organizational dynamics. And I think that one of the more important parts for everybody involved is building a team that will respect each other and bring everything to the table and feel comfortable bringing it to the table. My board of directors enjoys that about me, that I got no problem throwing it on the table and letting everybody know. I work with engineers of all different companies with all different areas of concentration real well, because we bring them into the team. Joe and I work with Entech and several other consulting firms, and we bring everybody to the table as, if you want to say, equals, so that we can all talk the same problem. Don't worry about what language it's in, but we all break it down so that everybody understands. And that really, I think, is what's been our key to success, is that organizational dynamic, building the teams, promoting all of that, so that when folks show up, you don't get that weird, I feel like I'm an outsider and now I got to tell somebody they got to spend $400,000. That's real uncomfortable. But hey, we're all a team and we have to get this done together. And the goal is the proper operations. And in the end, you get that ultimate accomplishment of adhering to your permit without any failures, or very minimal at that. And to me, that's important as well.
Love it. Love it. Well, I see we're coming up on 3:15. Dale, I know you have a comment, and there's a chat and a Q&A. I want to, in case people do have to leave at 3:15, I'm going to share my screen one more time. And if you enjoyed today's roundtables, we're doing more of them. We're trying to continue these every 3 or 4 weeks through the end of the year. Our next one scheduled is on the water side. It's Thursday, July 1st, water regulatory update. Lots of great friends. Got someone from Aqua, who's Deb Watkins from Aqua will be joining us, and Kevin Worley from AWWA, and I'm forgetting everyone else, but also Serena DeMagno from Spot Stevens and McCoy, and one other person, Patty Kay from the EPA, as well as your favorite people from Entech. Coming soon, we've got several that we'll be scheduling and putting up on our website. One that looks really good is how an environmental regulatory audit will improve your whole life. It might be a slight exaggeration, but tune in to find out. So go to our website, entecheng.com, and at the top, you'll see your resources button and a drop-down menu with the roundtables, where you can sign up for roundtables, learn about upcoming ones, as well as view past ones. We've got them all recorded. So to wrap up, I want a big thank you to everyone at Entech who came out for this. Ed Petrosky, Eric Moore, Dale Miller. Huge thanks to Mark Bubel. Always love hearing your stories from Aqua. And from Arrowhead Lake Community Association and Arrowhead Sewer Company, we've got Eric Ubek and Joe Rem. Thank you. Phenomenal getting to hear your stories too. And I'll leave this up for a moment, but I want to read one of the comments that had come in. This is from Matt Quinn from Entech, and he says, Dale is the man. He wants to take you everywhere with him that he can. On a side note, he suggests that timing can be everything when it comes to identifying an issue that needs to be corrected. The earlier, the better in terms of identifying items that are needed to be addressed, because after a project is established, and the budget and funding is secured, it's way tougher conversation to add items to a project in terms of explaining it to the board that they need more money. So don't be afraid to tell your engineer about the issues you're having, and do it early in the process. And then I just loved Eric's description of the team effort, bringing everyone together, and not, you don't have to know all the answers, but know people who do. So Dale, did you have another comment?
Yeah, I just had one, and I'm not beating up on engineers.
Yes, you are.
Way to go, Ed. All I can say, my comment, of course, when I worked in the municipal world, and Entech was our engineer, and I asked an engineer a question. I said, look, this may, and you shouldn't say this may sound like a silly question, but if if it's not going to work, I want you to tell me why. Why won't my idea work? And if you can explain to me why, like, okay, I'm good with that. But if you can't explain to me why it won't work, like, well, we better look into it a little bit more. You know, that's just
point.
a piece of advice for operators to your engineers or anything. And please don't ever be afraid to ask questions or make comments or say, you know, can we look at this a little different because of X, Y, Z? You know, if you don't say anything, they don't know. So
That's
then
right.
you can't fault them. So
good point.
they have to know that either you don't like what we're going to do or whatever, but you know, just ask questions. And then you get like me where people hate to see me coming because I got a list of questions this long, but it's like, there's nothing wrong with that.
Exactly. It's
Yeah.
your due
Really
diligence.
isn't.
You're being thorough. I love it.
Yeah,
That's
the
right.
more you ask, the more you're going to learn.
Joe, you had a comment?
No, I just want to back up his statements there. Have that communication, have that conversation. Ed, I'm going to pick on you again. Every time Ed comes to the sewer plant, one of the first things we do is a cup of coffee. And then we start that conversation. Then we'll do a walk around the plant. Same with Eric. Eric comes down to the plant, cup of coffee, and then we'll do the walk. You know, something to start that conversation. Because if you don't say nothing, nothing's going to change.
Good point. Yeah. Okay.
Some
You know,
advice.
we do have another question from our audience. This is from Michael Matichek, and he says, do the designers on the panel feel that 3D CAD drafting programs, have they helped make designs more operator friendly? I see Eric Moore, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Yeah, I've seen a few cases where definitely some pipe conflicts could have been avoided with 3D CAD, and some of those head bangers and nut busters could be avoided just by you in your 3D CAD. You can walk your little fake person through and you can see where everything lines up, whether they have clearance or not.
Excellent.
Another
Anyone?
thing, technology is a good thing. It's change. Embrace it.
Embrace it.
You're right. Okay, and to wrap things up, I always like to check with the panel. Anything else that we didn't cover? Any other words of wisdom for our audience that you guys want to share? Eric?
I will always say utility water is essential. It's a sewer plant. Things are going to get messy. You need water to clean up. If you're an engineer and you're designing a plant and you're not looking at utility water like 3 or 4 times to make sure you have enough utility water, you're not doing it right.
Ah, good point. Any other words of wisdom for the folks out there in the audience? Anything we didn't cover?
Don't beat up too bad on your engineers.
No, beat them up. Beat them up. Absolutely. Beat them up.
We try our best.
Oh my God. Well, a huge thank you to our audience. Huge thank you to my panel. I was really looking forward to this one because there's always so much good stuff from you dirty water guys. And I didn't know about headbangers and ball busters. Now I do. So I always end these by saying magical things happen when you bring together passionate people. So if you're going to wastewater treatment plants on your vacation, you guys are passionate, let me tell you. And I thank you. So big thanks to everyone out there, and we will see you soon. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Bye
Yeah.
now.